You just sent a simple text saying you can't make dinner, and now you're staring at 3 paragraphs explaining your exhausting week, your need for alone time, how you're definitely not mad at them, and actually maybe lunch next week instead. You hit send, feel ridiculous, and wonder why you couldn't just say, can't make it tonight. If that sounds familiar, what you just did wasn't politeness. It was your brain trying to protect you from a threat that doesn't actually exist. Here's what makes over explaining so weird. You rarely realize you're doing it in the moment. You genuinely think you're just being clear, just making sure there's no confusion. But if you actually listen to yourself explain, compared to someone who doesn't over explain, you'd notice something obvious. They say, sorry, traffic was bad, and move on. You've built an entire story about the exact intersection where you got stuck, the accident you think caused it, why you chose the highway over side streets, and whether leaving earlier would have helped. And it's not just being late. Over-explainers do this with everything. The exhausting part is that you can feel yourself doing it. You can hear the words piling up. But stopping feels impossible because somewhere in your brain, alarm bells are screaming that they won't understand unless you explain more. So where does this come from? Some people over-explain because they're terrified of being misunderstood. If you grew up in a house where your intentions were constantly questioned, where saying something simple got met with suspicion or accusations, your brain learned that being clear wasn't just helpful. It was how you stayed safe. So now when you tell your friend you can't make dinner, your brain is still running that old program from when you were a kid trying to convince a parent you really did finish your homework. You're not actually worried about the dinner. You're trying to avoid the danger your brain links to leaving any room for doubt. Next are the over-explainers who need you to see how smart they are. They can't just recommend a restaurant without walking you through their entire research process, the menu analysis, and the price breakdown. What's happening is their self-worth got tangled up with being seen as intelligent or thorough. Every extra detail is proof that they're not just smart, they're impressively smart. It usually comes from growing up in a place where being clever was the only reliable way to get approval. Then there's a third type that's particularly painful. People who over-explain because they learned early on that their version of reality couldn't be trusted. If you had a parent who regularly denied things that obviously happened, who called you too sensitive when you were hurt, or who rewrote history to fit their story, you learned something terrible. That your own experience isn't legitimate unless someone else confirms it. So now you don't just explain, you build a case file. You're gathering evidence for an argument that might never happen, but that your brain is convinced is coming. And the fourth one is sneaky. Some people over-explain to prevent you from asking questions. They sound knowledgeable, but they're actually scared that one simple question might expose what they don't know. So they create these elaborate explanations where every sentence leads to another detail, another tangent, keeping you so busy that you never think to ask the thing that would reveal they're not the expert they're pretending to be. And here's what makes it stick. Over-explaining usually works just enough to keep you doing it. Someone responds warmly to your over-explanation, not because they needed all those details, but because your obvious discomfort made them want to reassure you. Your brain marks that as a win, as proof that the strategy works and the pattern gets stronger. But you're not actually learning to communicate better. You're just getting better at using other people's reactions to manage your anxiety. And that's a game that never ends. Next time you catch yourself writing paragraph 3 of what should have been one sentence, pause and ask, what am I actually trying to do here? Am I avoiding rejection, proving I'm smart, defending my reality, or hiding what I don't know? Because once you know which need is running the show, you can deal with that directly instead of letting it take over every conversation. The over-explaining isn't the problem. It's just pointing you towards something deeper that needs attention. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing for more psychology videos.